everybody. Today we're going to be talking about winning methodologies for SKAN, which, if you've been following things, is now AdAttributionKit. Quick intro. My name is Mark Menery. I'm Global Head of Sales for Dataseat. I've been in the mobile industry for about 15 years now, give or take. Got my start at a company called JumpTap. If any of you remember JumpTap, JumpTap was one of the first mobile ad networks. We competed with companies like Quattro, AdMob, Millennial Media. We were actually acquired by Millennial Media back in 2013. I've worked my entire career with user acquisition folks, growth teams, working on apps, things of that nature. So today, what are we going to talk about? A few different things. The agenda's here, pretty straightforward. Want to give you a little bit of a background on Dataseat, who we are, an intro, and how we intersect in the privacy and the contextual world. Talk a little bit about AdKit and SKAN, do a little bit of an explainer. We're not going to do a wild deep dive, but definitely talk about some of the surface level stuff there. Going to talk about the Dataseat methodology. So this is kind of the main meat of the presentation. So how we utilize source identifiers, okay, and how we use an explore-exploit strategy to work on our campaigns. Go over a couple case studies, and then do some Q&A if interest. I'd say I'm probably going to be speaking for about 20-25 minutes, so I'll have everyone out of here maybe a little early. Okay, Dataseat. Who are we? What do we do? Dataseat is a true privacy-first mobile DSP. So we really stress the true privacy first. And we do that because privacy is quite a buzzword right now, right? It's kind of the cool thing to be within the privacy realm. But Dataseat anticipated these privacy changes, and we built our DSP to be 100% contextual, with no reliance on device IDs whatsoever, okay? So our two founders, David Phillipson and Paul Hayton, they actually founded one of the first MMPs. I'm not sure if anyone remembers AdX tracking. It was around back in 2009, 2010. AdX tracking was acquired by a company called Criteo, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. And while David and Paul were at Criteo, ITP was announced, which started the deprecation of first and third-party cookies within the Safari browser. Now, David and Paul believed that Apple really didn't care too much about Safari. This was more of a test bed of what was to come within iOS. So then fast forward a little bit, we hit April of 2021. ATT is announced, which is App Tracking Transparency, starts the deprecation of IDFA. Now, Dataseat was actually one of the few companies that was celebrating when ATT was announced because it fit our narrative so well. Now, since then, we've seen different variations of SKAN, Privacy Manifest are announced, AdKit, and now Google Privacy Sandbox is coming as well. I'm sure everyone's familiar, but I do want to touch on the difference between behavioral and contextual. So, behavioral targeting, behavioral optimization, what is that in the mobile world? Well, it was driven by the walled gardens, right? It was sort of whoever has the most data wins. And on the mobile front, it's looking at IDFA or Google Advertiser ID, right, to make a decision on who to bid on, right, based on apps that someone has on their phone, purchases that they've made, et cetera. So in looking at this, right, this is a pretty efficient way to bid and to optimize. Dataseat works off of contextual, right? This is more the content or the context of what the user is doing in the moment, okay? It's fully privacy compliant, okay? It's basically going back to the way advertising used to be. And one example that we always give is it's the reason why BMW would advertise on the Financial Times. But looking at publisher, day of week, creative, different signals like that. And we're going to go through those in more detail in a few minutes. So let's jump to SKAN for a second. So SKAN, for anyone who isn't aware, is Apple's privacy-preserving ad attribution framework. Apple decided in the most recent WWDC announcement that they were going to combine PCM, so privacy click measurement, on the web side, and then SKAN on the app side into AdAttributionKit. So this is sort of their new naming convention for SKAN. We see AdAttributionKit, which, by the way, Dataseat is just going to call AdKit, just to make this presentation a little bit easier, AdKit as a rebrand. Okay, so it still has all the same functionality as SKAN. We still have source identifiers. We still have fine and coarse grain conversion values. We still have 3 separate postbacks. We still have the concept of crowd anonymity. We still have lock windows. So it's basically SKAN 4, right, with a couple of additions. We now can track conversions from alternate app stores, right, once it's released. and then we can measure re-engagement as well. Now, this doesn't mean that we're bringing IDFA back, and this doesn't mean we can run retargeting with IDFA the way that we used to. What it means is that we can measure re-engagement within the postback. So, this is an example of an AdKit postback. A couple weeks ago, when I originally created this, this was a SKAN postback, but we had to change it because AdKit came out. It's very similar, right? It's almost the exact same thing. There's a couple differences. There's a few naming conventions differences. For example, Source App ID, which is the publisher app that the conversion came from, is now called Publisher Item Identifier. I'm not going to go through all of them. There's a couple naming convention changes, but a couple things to touch on. Conversion type used to be just download and re-download. Now it can be download, re-download, and re-engagement. So that's where we're going to measure re-engagement. Source identifier, remember this, we'll come back to it. This is the most important field that Dataseat looks at, or your demand partners, your DSPs, your ad networks. That's information that's passed back to us that means something very specific on the campaign. And then conversion value, that 42, that's the actual value of the conversion. And we're going to talk about those in a little bit more detail. But first, I want to talk about the concept of crowd anonymity. So when Apple released SKAN, the purpose of it was so that no companies could tie information back to an individual user, right? That was the purpose of SKAN, right? It's a privacy-preserving ad attribution framework launched by Apple. So when SKAN 2.0, 2.2, even 3.0 came out, we had this, this term called privacy thresholds, right? And I look at privacy thresholds as if you're not this tall, you can't ride the roller coaster, right? So basically it was if you didn't have a number of conversions within a 24-hour period within your campaign, Apple would withhold information, okay? But with SKAN 4, we got so many updates and so many additions, right? More source identifiers, which used to be called campaign IDs, more postbacks, more conversion values, all of these additions, Apple decided to tier off privacy thresholds a little bit, right? So it's this concept of crowd anonymity, which is a tough word to say, but I've mastered it. You have less, more, and most, okay? So a low level of crowd anonymity basically means that you have a very low number of installs within a 24-hour period within your campaign. Can't really hide in a crowd that well, right? So Apple says if that's the case, too risky, we're withholding information, campaign information from the postback. As you climb the ladder and you get more installs within that 24-hour period within your campaign, Apple will release more and more campaign information within the postback. So this is a good example of crowd anonymity playing a part within conversion value, okay? So top level, best case scenario, right? And just to clarify, there's two types of conversion values in SKAN. There's the fine-grained conversion value, which is a variable 0 through 63, so 64 variables, okay, that you can set to basically anything you want, any conversions that you want. So 42 might be a $99 purchase. It could be, you know, really anything the advertiser wants. But if you hit that top tier of crowd anonymity, you will get that 42 or that fine-grained conversion value in the postback, and that's ideal scenario. The next is called the coarse-grained. So coarse-grained conversion value is a low, a medium, or a high, right, where you can bucket those fine-grained conversion values. So you might say 0 through 20 is a low, 21 through 50 is a medium, 51 through 63 is a high. So if you hit a mid-tier of crowd anonymity, Apple is at least going to give you back a low conversion value or a medium conversion value or a high that tells you or at least narrows down what that conversion value is. But worst case scenario, you hit that low level of crowd anonymity, you don't get back anything at all. Those are called null rates. We don't like those, right? If you're an advertiser, you want really low null rates. This is an illustration. X-axis here is time. Y-axis is number of conversions. It's about a 2-week campaign in terms of days. Light blue is bad here, right? So each of those different colors represents a different conversion value, right? Light blue is basically null. That means we didn't hit that mid or high tier of privacy threshold. Information is withheld, okay? This prevents advertisers from measuring ROAS, retention, different things on their campaign, right? So that's not good. So what Dataseat's goal is to help advertisers, to help agencies, to help companies overcome these privacy thresholds. So we're going to talk for a second about our methodology. So remember I said that we are a privacy-first mobile DSP. We're 100% focused on contextual signals, right? That next block shows a source identifier, that 5, 7, and 39. We're going to go over that in a second. But this is basically our gateway into optimizing these campaigns. We have a very specific explore, exploit cycle that we run through when we optimize. Okay, we curate publisher whitelists, we explore, we exploit. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Then we have a CS team that does some human optimizations, targeting, et cetera. And then we have, obviously custom algorithms, machine learning, et cetera, that works. Now, we are masters of contextual. We've been doing it for a long, long time, been doing it since 2018, 2019, and then the team has been in contextual advertising long before Dataseat has been around, okay? So we understand the most important signals. X-axis here is level of importance. Y-axis is an example of some signals that we look at. These, of course, aren't all of our signals, but they're a good grouping of them. Top is most important, right? So in almost all cases, publisher app or publisher site or where the conversion is coming from in contextual advertising is the key piece. It's the most important, right? Then you have exchange in a lot of cases where different apps perform differently based on the exchange that they're on. Creative, tag ID, or placement. We're weighing these signals and understanding what's important for the campaign. Now, I want to talk about source identifier. So, source identifier, we receive in the source identifier postback. You should think of this in 3 parts: the 5, the 7, and the 39. So the 39 represents the lower digits, okay? That's one of 100 variables, 00 through 99, okay? Then we have the 7, that's upper digit 2. That's one of 10 variables, 0 through 9. Then we have the 5, that's upper digit 1. Again, 10 variables, 0 through 9, okay? You can set these to have any, or to pass back any contextual signals that you want, essentially, okay? Now, these are also held to tiers of crowd anonymity, but there's good news. There's no null value in source identifier, okay? So even at that lowest level, and these numbers are just for illustration purposes, they're not exact, but even if that lowest level of conversions, say you get 2 conversions in a 24-hour period in your campaign, you're still guaranteed to get back those lower digits. So in this example, we'll get back a 39 in that post back. Next best example, mid-tier of crowd anonymity, we'll get back the 7 and the 39. And then best case scenario, we receive back the whole part, the 5, the 7, the 39. Again, that's ideal. It tells us most about the campaign. So, knowing this, if we're so good at contextual, right, and we know that we're guaranteed to get the lower digits back, upper digit 2 will get back sometimes, upper digit 1 will get back fewer, but sometimes as well. How are we going to set this up, right? It's pretty obvious. We are going to apply the most important contextual signals to those lower digits, which we're guaranteed to get back, okay? As we work our way up the ladder, we're going to use signals that are important, but maybe not mission critical, that we really would like to get back, but we're not going to in every case, okay? So publisher app being the most important signal, we're almost always going to dedicate all 100 of those lower digit source identifiers to publisher app. But we're not just going to build a random whitelist. So we have technology, it's proprietary technology that we built with Data AI, Comscore, and a few other contextual partners, basically to output a custom publisher whitelist based on targeting, budget, all of these different factors, okay? So this isn't random, right? We have to come up with a pretty tight whitelist to run on because we're not doing behavioral targeting, right? We're doing contextual. We're a crawl, walk, run. We don't know the exact users to hit right away, okay? So we're going to build and curate a publisher whitelist. We're going to test, trim, explore, exploit, right? And this is the process that we're going to go through. But this is our explore, exploit process that we go through in optimizing our campaigns. So at the beginning of a campaign, everything is in exploration mode, okay? So we have those 100-digit lower digit source identifiers, right? We've assigned those to 100 publisher apps, right, which we feel are going to be the best performing, right? But we really have no clue. We have technology that tells us that, but you just never know in performance advertising, right? So we might dedicate 50 of those sites to rewarded inventory, 50 to non-rewarded. It's really going to depend, right? But basically, we're in exploration mode, and we're exploring constantly at the beginning of the campaign. One of 3 things is going to happen in our exploit phase, okay? 1, we're going to have a group of publisher apps that just don't work, that we remove from the campaign altogether. 2, we're going to have some apps that are on the fence that we need some more data from, so we're going to leave them in that exploration mode. Or 3, we're going to have apps that perform really well, that have enough data, that we know are working, right? So we can then move them to exploit, right? Because we know that they're good performing. Now, the most key piece of this, okay, is that with example 1 and example 3, where we're removing campaigns because of poor performance or removing apps for good performance, we're getting to recycle those source identifiers, okay? And this is really important. This illustrates our explore exploit process, okay? And this is really, really key to campaign performance and campaign scale. So everything at the beginning of the campaign is exploration, right? We're exploring. We're not sure what's working, okay? But over time, you see at the bottom, we're building up that exploit line item, or those exploit campaigns, okay? We're adding more and more sites or more and more apps to the exploit campaign because we know that that's working and we can allow machine learning to then take over and optimize. But exploration is obviously going to continue, right? We want to scale the campaign over time. So that's going to be a steady stream of recycled source identifiers that we're going to use over and over again. Now, if we've exhausted budget, we're hitting scale, things are going really well, we can actually use those source identifiers for creative or other contextual signals that we might want just to improve performance on the campaign. Okay, so using this sort of in the wild. This is a lot of text, but this was an advertiser that we were working with that had very large test budgets. They had a very specific CPI goal. They also had a very specific cost per registration goal. And you would think that a 7-figure budget is great to run over 60 days. It is. We were really excited about it. But we had a couple challenges with this one. One, the client wanted to be within CPI range, cost per registration range, hitting the daily spend, and have extremely low null rates almost immediately right out of the gate. Okay? So that was very difficult because with the process that we have, like I said, it's a crawl, walk, run, not just in terms of performance, but in terms of scale as well, as you can imagine. Because we're adding to exploit and we're constantly exploring, it takes some time. However, over a 3-week period, we sort of expedited this and did this process really quickly. We were within CPI range within 3 weeks, which was a 300% improvement. Same exact thing with cost per registration. We scaled the campaign to be hitting daily budget and then above to catch up with the 60 days after 3.5 weeks, okay? And then we've expanded to multiple territories since. So this was a big win for us. We're just getting to the tail end of the 60-day test, and we're very happy to announce that we have continued budget throughout Q3, which is great. All right, next example. So, client, couple challenges with this one. We had a smaller test budget, right? So it was sort of right at our SKAN or AdKit minimums, okay? This was a little bit difficult in terms of curating a publisher whitelist for this client because the output that we got, we weren't totally satisfied based on what our technology gave us for a site list or an app list. But we worked with it anyway. But it was a little bit too broad, or at least broader than we wanted to go. However, we used our explore exploit strategy, we used our source identifier strategy, and we were able to very quickly get within the client's CPI range. We were hitting their daily budget, it wasn't that high to begin with, and we've actually expanded to 10 plus different publisher categories, as well as subcategories, which is great and something we're not used to. We've expanded to, I believe we're at 7 geos now, which is great, and we've had a 780% increase in spend, and we are actually below the client's targets in terms of performance, which is always amazing news for us. Okay, starting to summarize a little bit. AdKit, AdAttributionKit, ACK, whatever everyone's calling it these days. Dataseat is going to go by AdKit just because we like the name. Doesn't play nicely with fingerprinting. I know that there's sort of a lot out there right now with privacy manifests and fingerprinting going away. Is it not? No one's really too sure. But really what it comes down to is that if you're going to use AdKit as your attribution framework, it doesn't play nicely with fingerprinting. We do believe that companies, for the most part, should have a completed privacy manifest, listing your tracking domain URLs. We do believe in user acquisition consolidation. With SKAN, with privacy thresholds or tiers of crowd anonymity, it does not pay off to use 5 or 6 DSPs and spread your spend throughout the market, because you're going to get null rates, you're going to have very low visibility. So what we say is test a lot of partners, but consolidate quickly. And then SKAN has gathered a fairly tough rap in the market, I feel like. I think AdKit is basically a rebrand, or at least that's what we're looking at it as. It's really not that bad. If you partner, if you're going to use AdKit, if you're going to use SKAN, partner with companies that know what they're doing. It's a framework that does have a couple hiccups or obstacles or challenges, but again, the right companies know how to overcome these, so we can certainly help. Really appreciate everyone's time. that's all for my presentation. If anyone has any questions or whatever, I can stick around for a few and answer. But thank you guys very much.